Here's a look at the Vintage Collection Death Star Droid. Here's a look at the figure in the card back, and it's always really nice to see those vintage Kenner card backs used once again in the Vintage Collection line. This image is pulled straight from that classic card back, and I think it looks really nice. It's very much a throwback with that kind of purple gradient background behind the droid, but I kinda like it. It's the same style we saw with the Vintage Collection Power Droid, which I was very happy about, so it's cool to see some consistency between the droids from Episode 4. Although I like the card back image, it is very noticeably out of focus, and that's something I don't like to see. In TVC, when they reuse older images on card backs, they'll try to update that image to keep it in line with modern standards. That's something that they've talked about doing on the figures that get re-released in TVC 1.0, and fixing that issue with the focus here should have been something that they've done. Moving up to the top of the card, we can see the 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm logo. This is a figure that came out in one of those Walmart waves of TVC 50th anniversary figures, and if we take a look at the back of the card, we can see that 50th anniversary layout with the timeline. This is VC 197 in the line, and taking a look at the other figures on the back, they're showing off the other figures from this Walmart wave of 50th anniversary figures. At the top of the card back that I received, you can see a crease that runs all the way along the top. You can even see it looking at the card from the back, and that is not something I like to see. The package on these figures is just as much part of the product as the figure itself, so they really should be packaging these things with that in mind. Looking at the figure inside the bubble, I think it looks pretty nice. If you take a look at the left arm, you can see it is starting to come out of the socket. That's not something that's too exciting to see on figures that are inside the bubble, especially if you're looking to open up the figure. Hopefully when I get this thing out, we can see if we can put that right back in. Alright, we've looked at the figure inside the card back. Let's go ahead and get it opened. Here is the figure outside of the card back, and it looks pretty nice. Right off the bat, I want to show you that I was able to get that arm back into its socket. However, it does still come loose when I try to move that arm. It can even be pulled right out of that socket if you give it enough force, and that's not something that I like to see. I can put it right back in, and it stays in no problem if I'm not moving it. Still, this is an issue that quality control should catch, and that shouldn't make it out on figures that are released. Either way, when I have the arm pushed back in, the figure looks pretty good. This is just a repack of the figure that was a Build-A-Droid in the Legacy Collection line. You can see that this thing has received a major paint upgrade since that figure, and I'm very happy for that. The old figure barely had any weathering on it, and this one has a decent amount all around the figure. There are some bare patches on this one where I wish they added more, but I still think it looks good. The weathering looks especially nice on the head, along the seams on the arms, and on the chest. And there's a lot of it all over those upper thighs, and I think that all looks pretty good. Although that paint job is a major upgrade, in an ideal world we'd be able to get this figure with a metallic chrome finish over it, something that looks more accurate to what the droid actually looks like. It doesn't seem like we'll be getting that on any figures anymore, so that's disappointing to see, but I really wish we could get that. They've added a little bit more of a glossy finish to this than that Legacy version had, and for that I am happy, but it isn't perfect. Looking at the head sculpt, I think it does look pretty nice. Again, that weathering looks pretty good on it, but I do have some issues with the accuracy. The shaping is a little off. The whole head is a little oblong, and especially the eyes, those should be way more circular and round. They should also be one connected piece without that seam in the middle. The eyes also should be a metallic silver color and not this black color. The black color is not at all accurate to what we see in the movie, and I'm not too happy about that. Despite all of those, I still think it looks pretty good. It's just a few accuracy things that I wish we saw. Now, because this is reusing an older sculpt, articulation is limited in some places. The hips are only on swivel joints, which limits what you can do with those legs, but if we look down, we can see that the feet are in an even worse position with no articulation, no joints at all on them. This makes it really hard to pose the legs because you can't adjust the feet to balance the figure. The knees are articulated, which is nice, and you can use that to try to balance, but it's still really hard, and those feet should have been something they updated when they re-released this figure. The elbows are articulated, and it looks pretty nice with some of the poses that you can get it in with that. However, there's not anything you can pose with the hands, so that's another thing I wish they updated. Overall, I think the figure is pretty decent. It is a major upgrade from any other version that we've gotten. I just wish that when they re-released it in TVC, they updated it with modern articulation. I know that isn't something they normally do when they reuse old sculpts, but it's something I'd like to see them start doing. Again, I would have loved to see a metallic, shiny finish all over this figure, but I get we can't really have that anymore, and what they did give us for a paint upgrade is pretty nice. For another look at this figure, other figures, vehicles, and playsets from across the Star Wars lines, be sure to check out the Jedi Collector on Instagram. Link will be in the description.